which we are very happy to curate and host with TechEU. As a quick introduction, if you missed the beginning, my name is Robin Wouters. I'm the founding editor of Tech.eu, and we are going to talk about innovation and scale-ups in the CEE region. And we are going to spend the next 40 minutes talking to a number of really great investors from all over the region, to basically discuss what more can be done to drive innovation here. So hopefully we can add everyone in one go, and then we'll move straight to the introductions and get started with the discussion. There we are. I'm going to be a very polite man and go ladies first. So Veronica, do you want to take the honors of briefly introducing yourself first?
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. My name is Veronica Pistor, and I am the general partner of Octagon Ventures based in Budapest. We launched our investment firm 2 years ago, and our portfolio is quite small, but we are on the way to grow it and becoming bigger, of course. And we invest in 8 countries in the region, of course, from Poland to Bulgaria, mainly early stage companies.
Fantastic. Well, you have to start somewhere, right? Mirella, quick introduction for yours.
Hi everyone, Mirella here. I'm from Launchpad Ventures. We're based out of Sofia, Bulgaria, but we also invest all over CEE. We're an early stage fund with ticket size between 500K and 1 million, and 2 million, sorry. I'm an associate there, pretty new to VC. I joined the team a year ago, straight from Google, and I'm working with the portfolio and also looking for new investment opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, and sorry, we have to go through this round of introduction, then we'll get to the good stuff. But Max, please introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, Robin. My name is Max. Pleasure to be with all of you here. I'm a partner at Vice Venture Partners based in Sofia, Bulgaria, like Mirella. And we run a relatively new fund that's with a very broad mandate. So we invest from small accelerator tickets all the way up to 1 million. The fund stands right now at 26 million euros, and I can't wait to have this discussion today with all of you.
Great. Well, you can't discuss the CEA without also getting someone from the Baltics involved. Sim, please give us a quick introduction as well.
Hi all, my name is Sim. I'm the managing partner at Lemonade Stand. We're also an early stage fund here. We made 20 plus investments so far, mostly in Estonia, because hey, country of unicorns, but also in the Baltics and other East European countries. So that's our focus. I'm probably the odd one out in this chat because we're really sort of early stage. Verif is the latest stage, and even there, they have only announced their A round so far.
Well, all the late stage companies have had an early stage, so that's it's just promising for the future. Oliver, last but not least, please give us a quick introduction as well.
Hey, Robin. Yeah, good to see you all, virtually at least. Yeah, Oliver, founder of Speed Invest. We are the oldest people in the room, it seems. We have started 10 years ago. Started also with a very small 10 million fund, but now we have 400 million under management. Invest pretty much across Europe, from London to Moscow. Have traditionally also had a strong focus on CE and would love to do more in the region. But I've invested pretty much in every single country in the region. Currently, roughly 160 portfolio companies and counting, doing pre-seed and seed out of our latest funds, which is 195 million. So that's us in a nutshell. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and that makes it for a very diverse mix in terms of stages and focuses and size and age, so that should make for an interesting conversation. So first of all, I'm going to put all of you on the spot. Raise your hand if you saw my presentation at Wolf Summit on the main stage this morning.
Half of it.
Okay, you saw half of it. So I guess that's okay. I guess I just sort of need to give you the basics just for context. But we did some research on scale-ups in the CE region. We identified 84 companies that have raised more than 15 million euros to date in their lifetime. And that's 13 billion euros being invested in those companies that we've tracked at least to date. So that's quite a substantial number. But I feel like it could be a lot more, and it probably will be a lot more. And we've already seen the activity in the first quarter of this year, which, by the way, is not finished yet even, already surpassing the numbers that we had for 2019, was a record year. So all in all, I think we're all very optimistic about CEE region, but I also want to hear from you, what makes you optimistic? Is it just the sheer amount of opportunities and the startups that you're seeing? Is it the quality of the entrepreneurs? Is it their global ambitions that are growing? So I want to hear from all of you. Let's start maybe with Mirella. What are you seeing?
Right. I mean, we're pretty optimistic about CEE. We see a really promising pipeline of startups coming from the region, which has been great. And I think the recent successes that we've seen, like UiPath, it's kind of like paves the way for the entrepreneurs to know where they can go. So the ecosystem is maturing. So we're looking to see more and more unicorns coming from CEE.
Yeah, great. And UiPath is actually joining us for a fireside chat later today as well. Seem, what are you seeing in the Baltics for that matter? Because you primarily look at the Baltics, but have you seen the level of ambition of the entrepreneurs evolve over time? What are you seeing from your standpoint?
For sure. I mean, we have good examples now in the region as well. In Lithuania, like Vinted, Latvia is maybe missing the trailblazer yet, but in Estonia, definitely the ambition is like world, because Skype TransferWise Pipedrive. I see a lot of denser ecosystem. The sort of alumni of TransferWise Pipedrive are now getting into angel investment. There are constantly teams peeling off from there into new startups. So just the number of startups and the quality of the startups have gone up. There's obviously a lot of opportunistic players there as well, where maybe it's not so serious or a bit greedy even. But the average quality is definitely up. And what I also like seeing is that there's, and Robin, I saw the part where you pointed out that the diversity of investments is still really, really poor. I'm still hopeful. I'm seeing locally a few more funds where it's female-led funds focusing on diversity in this region. It usually means gender diversity. I mean, there's also maybe like Russian minority where less investment is going, and the quality of the teams, technical abilities are as good as the other ones. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yep. We're also, from our side, also seeing more interest in investing sort of in female entrepreneurs and women-only teams. But you also see that the numbers for the partners within investment firms are also quite low, which of course trickles down to what they actually fund. So Veronica, that's maybe a good excuse to go to you as a partner of an investment firm. But yeah, since Sim brought this topic up, what are your viewpoints on this in particular?
I think more and more exits we have, it strengthens and grows the potential we have. That's what we see. So we had quite a challenge with the attitude. I think it was very typical in the region that we needed and missed the belief that we can somehow conquer the world from our region with global companies. And this mindset was not there. And as we can see, more and more success stories, of course, not only the unicorns, but all those people who could show that it happened with me and with our team. I could do that in 5 years, in 7 years, in 10 years. All those people started to join, and they have now time to invest back just their time to share their knowledge, to share their network, to share those things which are critical and crucial in this growing. And as the people, so now we made a research here in Hungary. That was the very first moment we created a research like Startup Poland has for 6 years now. But we made our first now, and I'm also a board member at Startup Hungary. So what we see now is the big change that people and the young people started to believe that they can conquer the world from here as well, and that's a big change of everything. That okay, I conquer not just the local scene, not just Hungary, not just the region, but I go further. So that's what we see now.
Yeah, definitely a question of mindset, role models, and also awareness and education, of course, in the market. Oliver, you have the benefit of having grown your fund to quite a sizable scope. Your team, you're investing in multiple regions, so that gives you the benefit of being able to compare. So if you look at the CEE region in particular, what has changed or evolved in the last few years that you find that it's still interesting enough for you to sort of go there and to make sure that you have feet on the ground and invest there?
To be 100% honest, I think too little has changed. I think I've given all the optimism and all the greatness. Frankly speaking, if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have thought more will change in the next 10 years. So I'm a bit impatient, to be honest. I think given the talent base that we have in this region and the opportunity overall, it is underperformed overall. I think there is a huge opportunity because statistically speaking, and just from a time period, at some point, this will flip. And for me, I mean, I've been building the Austrian startup ecosystem for I don't know, 20 years now. And I had to accept at a certain point, it's a question of time and of generations. And you can only force that to some degree. Of course, if you have a huge exit like UiPath, that changes something. But at the end of the day, you need people with fresh mindsets, and that is only so much that you can do there. I think now, again, for the next 10 years, I'm more optimistic, but we're not there yet. And if I compare it to I don't know, London or Paris or other ecosystems, they are also accelerating. It's not the CE that is accelerating.
Yeah, it's definitely something we observe as well. I'm going to let you comment in a second, but I just wanted to point out that it's interesting because when we started TechEU 7 years ago, we had the same sort of everything is changing and there's a movement. And then it took a few years longer than we would have anticipated. But now we're finally sort of in accelerated momentum. And once you get that flywheel running, I think, it just accelerates from there, right? So hopefully the same will be true for the CE region. Veronica, you were raising your hand. So.
Yeah, just I wanted to confirm that we always underestimate the power of mindset in this, and it changes slower than we expected previously, and that's why I am not impatient anymore because I realize that it's very, very small steps we need to somehow estimate in this, and probably not the number of unicorns are the points in this, because this is not the only thing which will somehow shape this region. Of course it matters, but probably not just this.
Maybe one small anecdote. So I had a call yesterday with a Baltic founding team, and it was a super interesting fintech company doing very exciting stuff. And like 20 minutes into the call, he said, okay, my ambition is to sell this company in 3 to 4 years. And I thought, oh my God, not again another CE company that wants to sell for, I don't know, 50 million. And then he said he did the calculation. He thinks in 3 years it can be a $10 billion company. So okay, maybe something is changing here. So
unfortunately, they still want to sell, but at least they want to sell for a couple billions instead of millions.
It's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. Max, I'm sorry, I haven't given you the word yet, but I'm sure you can comment on a lot of the things that have been said before.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, we here are very pumped about the region. Here specifically in Bulgaria, what we've seen and what gives personally to me a lot of hope is that over the last 10 years, since we were slightly early on that curve in this region, at least in the Balkans, in this part of Europe, with basically setting up funding instruments, kind of galvanizing the startup community. Myself, Mirella, we've been very much part of that work over the last decade, almost now. Well, what I see in this, this we find quite crucial, is that it gives us there is a platform, right? So a lot of we have in Bulgaria about, I always say around 1,000 people. It could be a little more, a little less, but it's somewhere there, who have had over the past decade experience with early stage startups, either as founders, sometimes as employees of companies. And what we see now in our deal flow is, basically the same people doing better, bigger things, right? And funnily enough, it's actually not only in tech. Like one of the funny things that I've observed over the last few years that I've been setting up this fund, and now it's operational and we're analyzing deal flow, is that we actually see a lot of people building great businesses, sometimes not necessarily in tech, but always with things they've learned in the tech industry. It's obviously very early, right? So when we talk about what Oliver has mentioned, that Veronica's commented on, this kind of you have to have patience. I totally see this. For us, it's very much a long-term play. We probably bet, and I personally bet, on this part of Europe, specifically Bulgaria, but also the neighboring countries, kind of converging with the rest of Europe, at least in the next few decades. Probably won't be much faster than that. New generations, a wider spread of opportunities and knowledge. And that's the game that we want to play. That's the game that we want to be part of, but it definitely takes patience. But things are moving, although sometimes not as fast as we want to.
Yeah, I think as Sim already pointed this out earlier, but there's no better way to accelerate an ecosystem, in my view, than to have a really, really huge exit, both financially and bringing talent suddenly to a region in massive amounts. I think that there can be no better catalyst for an ecosystem, right? Sim, you've seen this in Estonia already with not just Sky, but also now TransferWise, another company, and Bolt, of course. And so my question is, how much do you feel this effect, rather than, how would the ecosystem right there look like if you hadn't had those big companies at big valuations and big exits? To the degree that
I'll start with
by the way,
anecdote.
Sim, I think your connection for some reason tends to be bad. I don't know if it's just for me, but for some reason sometimes your audio breaks up a little bit. So I don't know if you can.
Okay. I'm assuming that you can hear me. Okay, I'll start with an anecdote. So after Pipedrive's exit last year, local business angels and started pinging me like, "Hey, what does that mean? Does it mean we'll be priced out of the rounds?" And I thought, no, it's brilliant. You'll have stronger co-investors in very early stages because they have been there. So maybe you come from an old industry of construction or whatnot. Now you can pair up with talent who's been through this fast Pipedrive. It took them 10 years to get to the growth, get to the exit. But still, it's kind of a fast growth story there. So I think that's really good for the ecosystem. Another anecdote is when now senior people are leaving TransferWise, then funds from Berlin are pinging me, "Hey, do you know what he's going to work on next? Like, can we invest in them?" I was like, okay, these are signals that weren't there before.
Yeah, Mirella, arguably places like Bulgaria and Romania are in a bit earlier stage than Estonia has gotten in the past few years. But do you also foresee sort of this big exits being a catalyst in the region in the years to come?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Bulgaria, just to think about the numbers, in 2020, the last year alone, there were 20 million invested in Bulgarian startups only. So I think this growth is definitely coming, and the whole CE region is seeing also a lot of attention from international investors, which I think goes back to the point that we touched upon earlier on mindset and how we can push that mindset that you can actually succeed from home. And now this is. I mean, it's getting easier and easier for founders to realize it when they're getting a lot of attention from also international investors, and they see like bigger rounds. Like one of our companies raised a 30 million Series B, which is great for the region. And I think more and more examples like that will drive more and more growth. And exactly to the point of what Sim was saying, all those successful founders are plugging back into the ecosystem, starting new businesses, setting example for the newcomers. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great observation. And I'm glad you brought up international investors, because that was actually going to be my next question. I'm going to go to Oliver, because you've co-invested with some of the biggest and best investment firms on the planet. So you must have a view on how they view the CE region. When you're sort of not very familiar with this region, what are the general observations or assumptions people make?
Well, I think there's a lot of cliche, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter that much. What experienced investors want and what the big guys want is they want top class, world class talent, and talent means that they can articulate themselves well. They have a track record, they have pedigree, and that's hard to find. Honestly, I mean, in Austria, also we have only very, very few people that fit that criteria that I can put them, so to say, in front of those global tier one investor groups. But that's frankly, if they see this and they see this quickly, they really do not care where they come from. It's totally secondary. But at the same time, if they don't meet these hygiene factors of charisma, proper English, clear articulation of a storyline, all these things, then you're off the table as fast as you may be on it. So it's brutal, and it's a one-shot game, and I think a lot of and it's still underestimated how crucial this self-reflection, so to say, the image of the founding team is, and there's still a long way to go. At the end of the day, VC is a herd phenomenon. People follow where other people are going. People follow the big success stories. Every VC out there has a scraper by now who's tracking employees from the big unicorn companies, and that's kind of this cycle. And at the end of the day, especially first-time founding teams have to break that, and that's super difficult.
Yeah. Veronica, maybe I know you have a small fund and you focus on early stage, but when you roll at Startup Hungary, for example, you must have contact with international investors as well. So maybe just the same question, but from a Hungarian ecosystem point of view, like when international investors talk to you or they want to meet with startups, what are some of the mistakes they tend to make on in terms of assumptions about the region? You're muted.
Sorry, I don't feel that they don't see us well. Actually, so they absolutely need that traction, need those things that Oliver mentioned. So I think they can absolutely feel that there is potential in it, but just few. And it's much easier than now, I think, to find the right partners among the local investors, among the local VCs, to understand each and every ecosystem in the region, because we are similar but with specialties, let's say, and I think that's what they absolutely started to feel. What I feel is the growth of their research and the growth of the talking. Somehow they are more and more interested. They are braver into asking and finding the right people, the credible ones, because we are absolutely pushed and pressured with many things in the region, which cannot help in the finance structures. So to say politely, and that's what started. So I speak more and more with international VCs. They come and ask, and all those negotiations and small talks are somehow more and more how we feel now. But I don't feel that they do not understand us well. They absolutely know the points, what is missing, what's there, and so on. Slim.
Yep, Sim, you were raising a...
To Veronica's point, I get more and more contacts from associates and other level reach outs from VCs in Berlin, London, US as well, where they're trying to establish sort of like deal flow from Estonia or the Baltics. And equally, I don't really see biases in terms of like, okay, you guys must be good at this and shit at that or something like this. But what I do see is they're trying to de-risk with revenues. And quite often it's, okay, this is interesting at too early stage. Like let's look a year from now. And sometimes I feel that might be true, and other times it's maybe a function of them not knowing the founders, or right now even not being able to meet them face to face. Maybe not having enough trust with me yet to say, okay, these guys are really good, like the network is solid and so forth. I think to Oliver's point on English skills, I was listening to the pitches yesterday at the Wolf Summit, and I was always trying to be conscious of my own bias. Okay, someone's English is not as good. Does it mean that it's a shit company, or does it mean that they just need to hire maybe someone who's really good at English and able to answer those questions more fluidly? So sometimes I'm thinking, like, bloody Brits, they always have an advantage because it's the native language.
Yeah, that's a good observation to make. I've also been in a lot of startup competitions in the past, and you have this unconscious bias towards, if someone is very eloquent and speak English, of course, it's going to be easier to understand what they're doing as a business. So that's always going to be a challenge, I think. Although I think it's also improving. And by the way, this has also been historically a problem in Germany and France, so it's not necessarily tied to the region per se.
But it
Max,
depends on how strong is the local.
Sorry,
Veronica.
go first.
Okay, I was just going to say that it also depends on how strong is the local investment ecosystem. Because if you can raise the first rounds locally, then you're kind of set on a trajectory. And if you don't have those angels who are willing to take bets, you have to go outside immediately, and you don't have the practice of pitching local and so forth. So, I mean, countries like Estonia do have the benefit that we have this very early stage ecosystem now.
And that's what I wanted to say and add, that the local VCs started to matter. I remember 10 years ago, local VCs were like players from private equity and from private banking and so on, without entrepreneurial experience, without many things. And now the local VCs, the credible ones, became somehow the gatekeepers or the source of the credible knowledge. And that's a very good point for the international VCs to give more credit to the ecosystems, and so that's also changed a bit in the past 10 years.
Yeah, Max, I'm going to go to you for my next question, because I'm glad you bring up angel investors and local VCs, because over the years I've heard quite a lot of horror stories of sharky angel investors and local VCs, trying to take too much equity, which means that the founders can't really go on to do follow-on funding without diluting themselves too much. So all of these sort of company-killing rounds that we see in an early stage, which, by the way, is not only a CE problem. I've seen it happen elsewhere as well. But do you still hear those stories as well? And do you think that's a problem that's going to be solved over time or not? You're still muted, by the way. Max, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for that. Absolutely, Robin. I mean, it's a process, right? Like everything else. I think that, coming back to the point which was mentioned by so many of us, of you here, the moment you have an exit or a series of exits in an ecosystem, that's when the culture really, goes through a radical shift, and the knowledge and the sophistication really start building up. But you see this all the time, right? In Bulgaria nowadays, not as much anymore, because first of all, we've had all these various funding companies and funds operating in the past decade, in the past 10 years. We just kind of, last year we celebrated. It wasn't a great year to celebrate, but we celebrated the 10 years of the Bulgarian startup ecosystem, and you can see that progress. Also now, when it comes to angels, after a number of exits locally, you can see also people from non-tech kind of, pulling up to tech, and we have one at least very active angel investor network here in Bulgaria. I think there are a few smaller informal ones as well, and the level of sophistication is definitely, I would say, on European par level. But when you look at countries, in our neighborhood, for instance, Serbia, for instance, Albania, North Macedonia, Kosovo, where I also happen to, to try to spend as much time virtually and in real life as much as possible. There, it's a few steps back, right? But it's moving, right? So it does happen. Just to answer your question, it does. You still see sometimes, like, way out there, expectations from angel investors that come from a very different industry, or very early funds that that are first-time fund managers of some very small instrument. But it's pretty quickly ramping up, I would say. So it's in progress.
Yeah, Oliver, same question to you, because you've looked at so many deals with so many investors over the years. You must have some horror stories to share as well.
Yeah, but honestly, I think that the years of the horror stories are almost gone. At least I don't see that much anymore. It's more what I do see is actually a lack of ambition from many local co-investors. There's still this kind of scenario as an early stage, and we are a pre-seed fund, so we are super early, but we still have maybe one or the other angel that comes before us. And then we have the opportunity to raise a 20 million round or something like this. And some of these angels, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we can sell earlier. Maybe, all these things. And it's so, it really frustrates me. It's like from the 90s, and we should move way beyond that by now. So. That's more of the problem. I believe these rounds where people take on 30% from an angel, honestly, then the entrepreneurs by now didn't do their homework. I mean, everything is online. You can read it up. It's easy to find. It's different than 10 years ago.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just going to say it's also up to the founders to educate themselves to a degree, because at this point, there's so many stories and resources available.
Yes.
You have to do your homework as well. You're
Totally.
right. Mirella, I'm going to go to you, because I want to know from you, when you talk to investors and entrepreneurs, then there may be founders or wannabe founders listening in, what are some of the mistakes that you see them make? Not specific to the CE region, but maybe just in general. Like, what are some of the mistakes they make when they first come to pitch you?
Oh, where do I start? I think probably
at the beginning.
Probably the most common mistake is, we speak with so many founders. I think last year we spoke with almost up to 1,000 startups for a year. So, our job is to listen to pitches. I think one of the most common mistakes that I've seen founders doing is, like, if you get that first intro call, the first 30 minutes, you want to just barge all the information in those 30 minutes and just bombard us with information. If there are any founders listening, just keep in mind that the first intro call with the VC is just to get a glimpse of the team, the product, the problem that you're solving, and to actually like you. So the next conversation will happen where you can tell all the detailed information. I think that's probably my top tip. Of course, like all the cliches, know your numbers. It's okay to say that you don't know, but follow up. I can go on and go on.
Yeah, I can imagine. Sim, I thought I saw you raise your hand or not. Do you maybe have something?
I didn't raise a hand, but I did write something down. So I think a lot of founders don't really treat fundraising as a sales funnel or sales process, and they talk to too few investors. But they think that 5 investors have said, "Okay, this sounds interesting." That's literally almost like a commit, and it's not, because we say that's interesting a lot because we want to learn more, and maybe there's other deals we're looking at and want to compare the numbers and so forth. So you really have to start with a very wide funnel to get to those term sheets or commits at the end. I think that's a one that I see a lot.
Yeah. Veronica, you had something to add?
Yes, I also have a tip, what we see as a typical problem, that they don't check the investors and they don't check the portfolio we already have. They don't check or taste. Many things can come out from our portfolio to just scan and analyze it a bit. How, why, the size, everything. Everything is written down among the criteria we have, but what we see that most of them has no strategy with finding the right investor. They just throw out to all, and that's not a strategy. There are always funnels as well among the investors, and I think they can save our times and their times as well if they somehow have a clearer strategy in that.
So once again, founders, if you're listening, do your fucking homework. Pardon my French.
Yeah, and maybe to add something to Veronica's point. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, maybe to add something to Veronica's point, don't treat that intro call binary. Like, it's not, if you don't get an investment, the call wasn't successful. Like, look in the portfolio. Look if there are any other partnership opportunities. Maybe one of the portfolio companies can be your next client. Like, just use that call and have a strategy to Sim and Veronica's point.
Yeah, great. We're almost coming up to the end of the conversation. We have about 4 minutes left, but I really wanted to ask this, and this is my favorite horrible topic, policy. And this is something that, you're sort of in tech EU, you see all these stories about the European Innovation Council and the EU Startup Nation Standard and the EEI Fund. Does all of that actually trickle down to the CE region? Is there a conversation going on among policymakers about how can we better serve our scale-ups? How can we cater to the needs of our innovation ecosystem? Is that a conversation that's also happening in the CE region? Yes or no? I want to ask all of you. Oliver, maybe start with you.
Yeah, so from my perspective, of course, EIF has played a tremendously important role in the region. I mean, I think that is clear. I think local governments much less so, at least from much less positive, I would say. I mean, there's still a nationalistic perspective on many things that doesn't help venture. And so allocating capital from governments to venture in a fund program or anything like that is super important and really necessary. Limiting it to small borders like Austria or, I don't know, Bulgaria or Serbia or anything like that just doesn't make sense. And so in that sense, I think we are in a bit of a dilemma, because the nation states don't help. Yeah, and that's what we need to solve. The EU is the right way to do it, but more alignment with the governments would be important here.
That's also my observation. Yeah. Sim, do you also have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just personally, I don't really think about policy that much. Being a very small organization, we're kind of focused on founders and startups and helping them. But Estonian government has been pretty good listening to the ecosystem and changing the rules. For example, fixing the options. Now with the large exits, there are some new things have bubbled up in the tax side, and fortunately we now have a more progressive government again, so they're open to listening to it. What I see from the portfolio side is that maybe 5 to 10 years ago, most startups were like, okay, US is the first market, and now quite often it's maybe it's Poland, maybe it's Germany, not even UK, and they immediately bump into the challenge of the countries are in the EU, but everybody still has different rules. So it's much more expensive in terms of time and resource to go into markets. And even as simple things like I invested into a company in Vienna, and they said, okay, you have to come over to sign this. It's like, I'm not coming over for one signature. So let's figure out another way. And everyone else is managing to do this like some other way, some digital way. So.
Yeah, sounds very familiar indeed. Max?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's very much here in Bulgaria. I would say that we have been very fortunate. Bulgaria has, in some ways, pioneered some of the approaches to implementing European policy and funding, also for other countries in the region, and even across the EU. Also here, just like what Steve mentioned about Estonia, the government has been quite good in implementing some of the changes. In Bulgaria, it's not done to say positive things about this government, but where it comes to our policy, I think they're doing quite a good job given the circumstances. So it's unthinkable. The progress we've had is unthinkable without European opportunities. Just compare with neighboring countries, right? So I think we should be grateful for that and continue using those channels.
Yep, Mirella, Veronica, very quickly because we only have a minute left, but yeah. Please.
Yeah, if I might add really quickly here, the conversations are definitely happening. And to Max's point, in Bulgaria, we also have BESCO, which is a non-governmental organization that kind of works as a bridge between startups and government. And they're pushing a lot of the things that needs to happen. Like, for example, their latest achievement is that they managed to create a Bulgarian startup visa. So this is a great way to attract more international talent. So the conversations are definitely happening.
Probably it's good that
Things are moving, which is great.
Because or bad because or scene is not so positive. And this I totally feel with many friends in the ecosystem that there is a raw misunderstanding still in the system. We need more incentives and structure, and not someone who is throwing out money without understanding a lot of things. Just a number, the state organization somehow invest the most, but that the number is never there. That what's the end of the game, and it's still on, but this is not the way what we need, and we really need incentives to help the private scene, the private ecosystem, the private I don't know what the private side to be able to become braver in this. Now the scene is totally distorted. Public and private. So, for example, Octagon is among the few ones who are private players on this scene without any public support.
Great. Well, we have to end. I could talk about this for hours, honestly, but we have to close and move to the next session. Thank you all for joining. I know you all live very busy lives, so thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I thought it was really interesting, and I hope the audience agrees as well. Thank you so much, and hopefully see you in person next.